Good afternoon, everyone. This is Welfare on the Welfare All-Stars show on tnsradio.ning.com, scottishsovereignsontheland.ning.com. Hello, everybody. We've got Nick Neo with us today, and Whilst One will be joining us to have a discussion later. It will be around, a discussion with Whilst One will be around sort of dog well-being and health and tick and flea infestation and how to get through those kind of topics without using, chemicals. So then we're just going to have I'd like people to phone in if possible, if they've got anything they want to say about how the show's being run, if they've got any general questions, then really want to have sort of an open sort of second hour. So if anyone's up for phoning in, please do. Give Jack a call or just give me a call. Okay, we're going to kick off, as usual, with news items, and I think Nick's going to go first. Hello, Nick.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you want me to go straight to it?
Well, yeah, general hello as well. How you doing? And
not too bad, just nicely warm, sat in the shed, socks off, quite happy.
Good. Enjoying the sun?
Yes, it's too warm to be doing too much at the moment, so wait till a bit later, I might do a few more things.
Well, hopefully we're going to have a good show for people this afternoon, so keep listening in.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Right, if you want to kick off with your news item, let's go.
Yeah, we had someone picked up this for us. It was a blog site. Very clearly, the word liberal hangs around a lot, and there's a very nice yellow bird at the top. Done by a gentleman called George Potter, aka the Potter Blogger, and it's called The Scandal of the DWP's Advisors. As regular readers of this blog will know, I've spent the past 3 months taking quite an interest in disability welfare issues. Specifically, I write a motion which was passed at the Lib Dem conference to become party policy, which called for the government to scrap their planned arbitrary time limit on how long disabled people could receive benefits for, and for the government to fix the utterly broken assessment system that was bequeathed to them by the last government. One of the things that has come from that is that I've learned quite a bit about how the DWP reaches decisions and who advises them when they make these decisions. And the picture that's emerged is rather disturbing. All the way back in 1994, the DWP hired the Vice President of US insurance company, Unum, Dr. Leo Cascio, to sit on a group responsible for designing and enforcing new medical tests for disability benefit claimants. Now, according to Private Eye, at the same time the UK wing of Unum was launching what it boasted was a concerted effort to harness the potential from predicted cuts in benefits, urging people to protect themselves with long-term disability policy from Unum. A year later, Private Eye questioned the Cascio about a potential conflict of interest, which was denied. Fast forward 10 years, and Unum was found guilty in the US of systematically violating insurance regulations and fraudulently denying or lowballing claims using phony medical reports, misrepresentation, and biased investigations. In 2006, Unum executives sat on the panels that devised the work capability assessments, introduced in 2008, and which have a failure rate of 40% according to official figures. Not only that, but along with Atos, the company that conducts the assessments, they were the only for-profit companies on the panels. So even if you believe that private companies should be included in government policy making them, why was the cartel of two massive organisations the only companies listened to by the DWP? Then in 2004, Unum set up a £1.6 million research centre in Cardiff, which subsequently received £300,000 of taxpayers' money from the DWP. According to a Private Eye article from last year, Unum has been lobbying, sitting on expert groups and hosting meetings at party conferences of all colours ever since. And lo and behold, in May this year, Unum's then medical officer, Professor Michael O'Donnell, jumped ship to become Chief Medical Officer at Atos. He barely had time to catch his breath before giving evidence to the Commons Committee looking at the Welfare Reform Bill. Despite all of this, DWP has repeatedly brushed off inquiries about the relationship with Unum, including the one from Norman Lamb, Nick Clegg's health advisor, and has continued to involve union with policy making, something which is still happening at the moment. It appears that it doesn't matter which government is in power, as the DWP seems to pay more attention to private insurance companies than ministers when making policy. Meanwhile, the DWP has continued to publish misleading statistics, which are then picked up with glee by the tabloids, such as the claim that 75% of claimants are fit for work, something which was reported by papers as 75% of claimants are scroungers. The DWP has been repeatedly rapped over the knuckles for this by the Office for National Statistics, partly because only 0.5% of claims are deliberate attempts to defraud the benefit system, and yet Employment Minister Chris Grayling says he is bemused by it. Given the recent dramatic rise in disability hate crime, then I'd call that criminally irresponsible and callous. But this attitude isn't surprising when you consider who advises his boss, Ian Duncan Smith. His two key special advisors are both, shall we say, questionable. Susan Squire is one. Until just after the general election, she worked for the Taxpayers Alliance, an organisation which fully signs up to the all disability claimants are work-choice scroungers, and which is so right-wing that it makes Margaret Thatcher look like a bleeding heart liberal. Meanwhile, disability charities and organisations such as the CAB are generally only given lip service by the DWP when it comes to involving them in policy making. It's not surprising that the DWP thinks that arbitrarily cutting benefits off to disabled people after 12 months, regardless of their condition, is a good idea when the main people driving policy are right-wing nutters and rogue companies with vested interest in milking the public purse for all they can get. Words cannot easily describe how horrifically DWP policy making seems to be, but perhaps if people like Chris Grayling and IDS actually spoke to some disabled people occasionally, instead of listening to religious and political extremists, then they might actually start to treat sick and disabled people with some basic compassion and dignity, rather than acting like the idiotic, incompetent, heartless cunts that so many Tory ministers seem to be. You like that ending?
Yeah. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that.
No, it caught me by surprise too, which made it a good read.
Okay. So I guess I'm next then, is that right?
I don't know. How are you doing at the moment? How is the sunburn?
Yeah, it's a little bit painful. I think I'm gradually getting over it. But
Okay.
I don't think I'll be able to go as fast as I normally go anyway, so I'm reading these things. Okay. Anyway, this is another article from The Guardian. It's titled GP's Call for Work Capability Assessment to be Scrapped, which sounds quite positive. But anyway, there it goes. It starts off with doctors say method of determining who is eligible for sickness benefits should be replaced with more rigorous and safe system. So GPs have voted unanimously in favour of scrapping the controversial Work Capability Assessment, WCA, the test that determines who is eligible for sickness benefits to prevent harming some of the weakest and most vulnerable in society. At the annual GPs conference, doctors backed a motion stating that the computer-based assessments are inadequate and have little regard to the nature or complexity of the needs of long-term sick and disabled persons. They called for the test to be replaced with a more rigorous and safe system. The vote at their annual conference in Liverpool reflects rising concern within the medical profession over the government's use of the work capability assessment to reassess recipients of the outgoing incapacity benefit to determine whether they should receive the replacement benefit, employment and support allowance. Since the test was introduced in 2008, hundreds of thousands of people have gained decisions Hundreds of thousands of people have against decisions to refuse them the benefit. Around 40% of appeals are successful. Large numbers of patients with terminal and incurable conditions have been found fit for work after undergoing a 30-minute assessment carried out by a private company, Atos Healthcare. Andrew Holden, a GP from Petersfield in Hampshire, said the system was not able to distinguish between patients who really needed help and those who did not. Since the system was introduced in 2008, people with terminal cancer have been found fit to work. People with mental health problems have complained their condition is not taken seriously, and people with complex illnesses say that the tick box system is not able to cope with the nuances of their problems, he told the conference, proposing the motion. The computer-based assessments are carried out by a healthcare professional, but one not necessarily trained in the field of the patient's disability, which is particularly important when it comes to mental health issues. Lawrence Buckman, chair of the BMA's GPs committee, said when 40% of appeals against the assessments are successful at tribunal hearings, something is clearly very wrong with the system. Being in work is good for people's overall health and well-being, but GPs are seeing too many patients who generally need to be on incapacity benefit coming in very concerned and confused by the system. The government needs to look again at the whole assessment process and replace it with one that is fit for purpose. Dean Marshall, chair of the Scottish General Practitioners Committee, who has already passed a similar motion, welcomed the vote. These assessments can have a devastating effect on our patients' mental and physical health. There has been a dramatic increase in the numbers being assessed as fit to work, and a massive number of appeals have been made against these decisions. The frequency of successful appeals seem to us to demonstrate the mechanism's shortcomings, he said. Our patients are very concerned and confused about these assessments. Many are in fear of how they will cope with the removal of or cuts to their benefits. Evidence appears to suggest that people with serious health conditions are sometimes being declared fit for work. Labour MP Tom Greatrex, who has raised a number of concerns about the WCA, said the government should not dismiss the strength of feeling being expressed by the medical profession in this motion. The very people that DWP are reliant on to carry out the assessment. As the motion reflects, assessing whether people are able to work is right in principle. In so many respects, the practice has been appalling. Thousands of people have suffered because of decisions ATOS get wrong time and again, costing the public purse millions. A spokesperson for the Department of Work and Pensions said improvements were being made to the system. We're absolutely committed to the reassessment of people on incapacity benefit and helping those who are fit to work move back into work. Under the old system, too many lives were written off. The work capability assessment introduced in 2008 was not fit for purpose, which is why we are implementing all the recommendations made by our independent reviewer. To make this a better and fairer process, we want to keep improving the WCA, the department wrote in an email statement. The vote means that calling for the DWCA to be scrapped is now the policy of the BMA GPs Committee, which represents 44,000 family doctors across the UK, and the committee will attempt to make its views clear to the DWP. So, I mean, it just, that article comes across as more positive, and it seems like, things are taking their steps, perhaps for a decent change, and, hopefully we'll see what happens. There are people, medical people, decent medical people who obviously see the problems that people are having with the system, and I think they're all pushing forward in supporting those who need, the genuine help. So, yeah, it's, we'll see what happens. It seems to.
I hope that's the case, and
yeah, I do as well.
How long is this going to take? It's just been, it's just been brought to Parliament, isn't it? So how long is that going to take?
Well, yeah. How long's a piece of string, huh? Well, we'll just hope it won't take too long. I mean, as long as the pressure is still piling on, as long as people still put on the pressure and they don't just walk away and forget it and just say, oh well, everything seems okay, things are going to change, it's going to be okay, and they stop stop fighting. I mean, there's they got to keep on pushing until things really, really do change. It's not good to just think that things are going to change, think that things are going to be positive, and then just not continue on fighting. So yeah, got to keep pushing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good thing, but again, how long is it going to bloody take?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on to this news item, and it's been quite a biggie, I think, this week, and I want us to have a discussion about this. I'm going to bring Jack in, because after I've read this out, just for a bit of a discussion. So I'll go ahead. Hold on. Right, move to make addicts employable. Drug addicts and alcoholics rendered unable to work by their condition will face active intervention in their lives to make them clean and employable, a Cabinet Minister is to say. Changes to the welfare system will be focused on getting those claiming benefits because of reliance on drink and drugs, such as heroin and crack cocaine, into rehabilitation and ultimately the world of work. Work and Pensions Secretary, in brackets, cunt, Ian Duncan Smith, will say. In a speech to an event hosted by Alcoholics Anonymous, he will say the welfare state has failed the almost 360,000 addicts who rely on benefits for their income. He will argue at the event at the Houses of Parliament in London that his new universal credit system will encourage them to seek help and become employable again. The outdated benefit
one second,
system.
love. Sorry, I'm going to have to pause you there a second. What's going on here? I'll turn the volume down a bit there. Right there. I think that might be one of you folks with your speakers up too loud at your end, or you might unmuted, so I don't know if you want to just try turning yourselves down, folks. That should be better.
Right, okay, sorry about that. Okay. To encourage them to seek help and become employable again. This outdated benefit system fails to get people off drugs and put their lives on track, he will say. I don't know what it's always saying, he will say. How do they know what he's going to say? Anyway, he will have. We have started changing how addicts are supported, but we must go further to actively take on the devastation that drugs and alcohol can cause. Under Universal Credit, we want to do more to encourage and support claimants into rehabilitation for addiction and starting them on the road to recovery and eventually work. Getting people into work and encouraging independence is our ultimate goal. Yeah, right. Universal Credit will put people on a journey towards a sustainable recovery so they are a better place to look for work in future, and we will be outlining our plans shortly. Statistics from the Department of Work and Pensions, DWP, show that almost 40,000 people claim incapacity benefits with alcoholism as their primary diagnosis. The DWP says 13,300 of these people have been claiming for at least 10 years. It also says that around 80% of Britain's estimated 400,000 problem drug users, some 320,000 people, are claiming out-of-work benefits. Combating the effect of drink and drug addictions are the latest step in Ian Duncan Smith's controversial reform of the benefit system. The Welfare Reform Act, which received royal assent in March, brought in the universal credit system and a £26,000 a year household benefits cap. Okay, I mean, that's the end of that story. I just want to say the few people that, in the grand scheme of things, that this will affect, to save cash is minimal. There are so many other ways of saving cash. It clearly is another targeted intervention into vulnerable people's lives. And it really does get my goat. I know people's opinions on drug addicts. I have my own opinions, and actually I'd like to have a bit of a discussion. So if people do want to, post anything in the chat, then I'll make sure I look and we do talk about it. But I'm going to bring Jack in, and I know Nick and Neo are around as well to, join in on this. So hey Jack, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I'm getting you.
Cool. I know you've got a few opinions on this.
Well, certainly, as I'm public about being a recovering heroin addict and alcoholic. I've experienced the sort of elements of disability. Claiming as disabled. I've also essentially been so ill in the past that I haven't been capable of claiming as disabled because of the hoops that you're forced to jump through, and as a consequence have been left on income support and being required to meet all of the usual requirements of income support and constantly being kicked off because I'm unable to meet those requirements. Right? It's a hideous place to be, and the prospect of being having rehabilitation forced upon you is, in my mind, just sheer madness, because you cannot force somebody into sobriety.
So what do you think forcing people to go to rehab would do, and then cutting their money if they, refuse to go to rehab and stick rehab?
Well, it's going to force everybody onto the government's medication instead of onto the... You know what I mean? So everybody will be prescribed methadone, everybody will be prescribed Subutex or Heminephrin. And many of these so-called treatments for addictions are far, far worse than the substance that you're initially addicted to.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we both know people that have had experiences with NA and rehab, personally. So I don't know if you want to talk a little about that.
Yeah, well, certainly. Just what people may imagine rehab consists of is very different, or certainly what I thought that rehab must consist of was very different to my experiences. I've never actually been through rehab myself, although I've been under the various sort of drug and alcohol community services. I've never actually attended rehab, but I've visited many friends in rehab when I've been allowed to. And
exactly allowed to.
Yeah, well, I mean, and bearing in mind that I would entirely uphold that sort of separation from your peer group through rehab if your peer group are users of the same thing that you're trying to get clean from. That's a very dangerous thing. But obviously it's a completely different story if, as in my case, in a lot of instances, I was actually pretty much clean and sober and might have only smoked a bit of dope. But the fact that I smoked a bit of dope was enough to, it completely excluded me from being there to be able to support whoever it was that was going through the rehab. So,
yeah, they're very anti any kind of relationship, especially
any kind of relationship, full stop. Which is the real thing. There was that the thing that really scared me about going to visit friends in rehab was that they would report that they weren't even allowed to associate with other people in rehab. They were not allowed to form any kind of familial bonds with anybody else. It's the most awful sort of deprogramming, the most awful sort of drug-induced reprogramming, and that's what I really fear here, is that we're probably taking the people who have woken up to how the world really is, probably have ended up resorting to drink and drugs because of the abomination that they find themselves living amongst, and yet still, enforced medication, enforced incarceration.
And yeah, it is programming. I think it is reprogramming.
Well, the number of people that we know known over the years between us that have been through the 12-step program and end up as 12-step program robots.
Yeah, I mean, my very old school friend Mara in particular, she was such a great person, and going through it was AA for her because she had a drink problem. And what happened to Mara, that she just changed so much, completely out of recognition. And I don't know, do you have to lose your soul to get clean if you've got an addiction? I don't think so. It's a medical condition. You should have to change your soul and what you believe and how you want to be just to get clean, surely.
Well, I mean, my belief really is that all substance addicted, even just addictive personalities, it doesn't necessarily have to be a substance that you're addicted to, is essentially all coping strategies to get around various, underlying mental and emotional health problems, which aren't addressed by society at large currently, and are probably in a greater part caused by current society. Yeah, I agree. But also, NA and AA. I mean, I don't know what other people have had experiences of NA or AA, and I know we'll bring in Nick and Neo as well in a sec. But our experiences of NA and AA are pretty poor. Yeah, and where do both of those organisations actually stem from, and how are they set up? It's all very.
It's you're in my gang, you stay in my gang, you don't belong to any other gang. That's kind of when you're in there, you have to be in there, even when you're clean. 7 years later, you go into meetings. Why? 7 years down the line, 10, 15 years down the line, I know people that still go to meetings to stay on track. I think that's pretty sad, really. That's my opinion. I don't know, Nick, Neo, Nick first. Well, I know you have some opinions around this, as you know quite a few people as well that have had issues around addiction.
I do know a few people. I've lost a few friends along the way. The main thing I'm saying, I think, from what Jack says about the policy of rehab, I think the point being is whatever has caused that addiction has got underlying trends. If someone's had a bad life, if someone's been abused, if something else has happened to them, It may be a reason why they're using or abusing substances. I know of a good friend he went through AA and through a few different rehabs. And his opinion now is it's all bollocks. I think he's gone beyond that. His one, and he agrees with me on it, is more you connect with people. If I found someone in need of rehab, you take them out to the countryside, you make them camp out. You chop wood, you fetch water, you sit by the fire, you drink tea, but you connect to people and you talk to them.
Yep.
And you have some time to yourself, time away from where you should normally be, and just look at what your life is doing and make your decisions, be that what they are.
Not be reprogrammed by a bunch of people that you don't know. You're completely taken out of your surroundings, stuck in a place that's very unfamiliar, not allowed to make friends, you're watched constantly. Is that the environment to get someone, off whatever they're addicted to? I don't think so. I'm with you. Out, countryside, camping, whatever, and keep away from it that way.
I think it's more a case of you give someone space to do that, and I've seen people do it previously with other things. If you take someone to a good campsite or somewhere, if they're sitting by a river, I think Pon Wan was talking about it yesterday. You sit someone down by a river and they start to get the positive vibes out of nature and things. That has a significant effect on them.
Very
Far
true.
better than being stuck in a room, from what I've seen of rehab, very soulless rooms, fluorescent lighting, hard chairs, maybe drinking tea, playing cards, bored to death with nowhere to go and nothing to do.
And very regimented as well. You have to get up at a certain time. You have, workshops at a certain time. You have whatever they're called, when everyone talks about their experiences and, tries to move on. You have those sort of sessions in the morning and the afternoon. They're pretty, pretty regulated. You have a, set program for every day. It's wrong.
I'd like to add in here that had I have been in those circumstances trying to get clean and sober myself, there is no way that I would have been able to do it. The kind of 3 months that I put myself through a full detox at home for, I was essentially the only way that I could personally cope with it was to be completely in control of my circumstances, to be able to play loud music when I wanted to play loud music, to scream and shout when I wanted to scream and shout, to sleep all day if I wanted to sleep all day.
And to have, you spent a lot of time in the bath as well, didn't you?
Yeah, and meditating in the garden and...
Yeah, far support as well, I think, is... Because that's the other thing you don't get in rehab. You're not allowed anyone that you love near you. And, being put somewhere like that with no one around you to support you, it's scary. It's a... scary time and wrong. So, yeah, best place, if you can get it, from your family or from your friends. And I know, people tend to turn their back quite a bit on, drug addicts for whatever reason. But, these people can be very vulnerable. They're using for a reason or have used for a reason. So, I don't know, be kind. And I don't know, I think that's my general motto in life. Just be kind. Be as kind as you can. Neo, I do want to come in and say something.
Yeah, just quickly, when it was mentioned about, having the soul, and, I think with this, the system and people sort of waking up, and those who do have a soul, that they can see all those big problems, and they end up going to these addictive substances, is that, maybe because they do have that soul, and they really see those problems, and that's kind of the only way they can feel that they, numb the overbearing feelings that they get from knowing the truth. I think we've all kind of go for it, when we kind of go through that waking up process. Another thing is like what they're trying to do there, let's say, with the article you read earlier, that it just seems like good business again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That you can start just shoving pharmaceuticals down people's throats in a controlled manner, and those pharmaceuticals have to be bought. It's so backward as well, because it's like, it's kind of like the state just thinking, well, we're just going to stick all these people, into almost like an asylum. Well, you have an addiction. There's something wrong with you. You have an addiction. I mean, but like what Nick said, is that perhaps the best way is to go back out into nature and to be part of nature. Because I think if you're still inside the system and you're still absorbing all the crap and everything that you really despise about it, because you know what it is, I don't think you'll ever really ever completely get over these things. And so, getting out into perhaps nature and in that kind of more peaceful environment where you have running water and you have trees and you have grass and you have all this stuff and you have people around you that you can discuss things outside and not in some kind of white room environment where you have these people running around and ordering you this, ordering you that. I mean, it's
not good. And also, what if you fail? I mean, are they? Well, I know it says. I've read other articles that say they're trying to write in that you won't be sanctioned if you fail to attend rehab or whatever. But,
it depends on how much control they want to set up. I mean, we kind of hear about. I mean, look at the controls there are with like ATOS and the outright. The outright lying and the outright just making stuff up, to reach a target. I mean, everything's going to be target-based, no matter what they change. They're going to say, well, there's going to be a target now. You have to get this many people off drugs or this many people off alcohol. And you can imagine it, can't you? I mean, it's more than likely they'll just, make something up and then the figures or whatever. And next thing you know, you've got people being sanctioned who don't deserve to be sanctioned because somebody, has a target to reach. I mean, we already see what's going on with people on disability. So I mean, it's not. It doesn't. I mean, it's
backdoor eugenics. I think is the phrase that you're looking for there, Nick.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is pretty much it. I mean, if you put it with the way the state is and the way people are, with the people within the state at the high positions, I don't think they're there in those positions. When you see these ideas that they come up with, but there's no way that's there to benefit,
Okay,
because it seems unnatural. The whole mentality is artificial. There's nothing quite natural about it. There's nothing quite human about it,
It's absolutely inhuman. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, can I just butt in here? Somebody's just Stephen's just put in the chat box about. I'll just read it out. If they can fast-track people onto methadone maintenance, that's good. But if it's abstention or sanctions, that's disgusting. I have to really, really strongly disagree here. All right? Methadone is possibly one of the most pernicious and dangerous substances being pushed onto opiate-addicted people ever. I've got a good friend who calls it Method 1, referring to its Nazi origins. This is essentially a synthetic opiate which has, let's just be completely crystal clear here. Pure, clean, smokable heroin is harmless. Okay, many people might have a big problem coping with that, but physically it does you no damage. Obviously, smoking anything is going to damage your lungs, but in comparison with alcohol or cigarettes, it is essentially harmless. You can live a full and complete life as, let's say, a morphine addict. There have been so many surgeons that have got to the end of their careers and finally come clean about the fact that they've spent their entire surgical career as a morphine addict from, experimenting as a student doctor or whatever. The issue with methadone is that it replaces what is a non-toxic, non-body toxic substance. I'm not covering the issues of addiction and what the lifestyle accompanying addiction produces, but just simply in the body toxic sense, you're replacing a non-body toxic substance with a withdrawal from physical dependence of a week to 10 days with a substance that is hideously, perniciously toxic. It is toxic on every level. It destroys your teeth, it destroys your bones, it saturates into every core of your fibre, and then it gives you a 3-month withdrawal that makes heroin look like a fucking party in the park. And simply, there is a 96% chance of you dying with your opiate addiction. You may not die of it or from it, but there is a 96% chance that if you're opiate addicted, you are going to die with that opiate addiction. Now, putting into that mix an extra, whatever it is, 2.5 months, two and 2/3 months of painful, sustained withdrawals is just, you're not giving people a means by which they can escape their addiction. You are simply replacing one addiction with a far more dangerous, far more pernicious, far more difficult substance to actually get your body to be not physically dependent on. Sorry, rant over.
No, but all of that is completely true. However, methadone has got its use. If you don't, the issue is putting people on a maintenance script for a long-term script, which is.
Can I just butt in again here? Of course, as well as this, we've got the studies in the Wirral with that lovely doctor who was he was actually prescribing injectable heroin, and he had absolutely huge success with his local population of addicts, where essentially there are almost no new addicts coming into the scene because nobody was needing to sell anything to anybody. The injecting was done in the clinic on a daily basis, so there was no script or anything like that to be bought or sold on the black market. And the level of consumption amongst all of his patients was reducing. And he's now actually gone to work in Norway, I believe, because first of all of the local NHS services, because they weren't taking up this service, there was perceived to be a movement of injecting users into his area so that they could access his service. He was also really, really against the prescribing of injectable heroin to smoking heroin users, and campaigned very, very strongly to extend the service that he was already providing with injectable heroin for supplying smokable heroin, and the government just said no. You can carry on prescribing injectable heroin. You can prescribe injectable heroin to smoking heroin to heroin smokers,
and get them into.
but you can't give them smokable heroin. So the only safe way for somebody who is already smoking heroin, I mean, this is the other issue as well, is everybody knows that heroin causes overdose deaths. Well, most people probably won't realise that that's almost physically impossible to do to yourself by smoking it. You'll simply fall unconscious and wake up a few hours later. You know what I mean? It's almost impossible to actually imbibe enough heroin by smoking to overdose. So all of the overdose deaths linked with heroin consumption are all more or less linked directly to the fact that people are injecting it and have no knowledge of the strength of the amount they're consuming. And of course, once it's in your vein, it's in your vein. You're in for the ride, whatever your dose is. So, sorry, again, rant over.
No, thank you. No, good that you're coming across with something you obviously feel very passionate about and know quite a bit about and have experienced yourself. So I just want to read a couple of things that Stephen's written. Right. Better to be drinking methadone instead of sticking unadulterated poison in your veins. Methadone shouldn't be stopped. You should only take it if you can't do without it. Do without opioids. I disagree with a lot of what you said there. Sort of, I'm in the middle really, because I do think methadone and things like Subutex have their place. I think if you're prescribed methadone for a short-term withdrawal program, and it's like an 8-week program, and you start on whatever meal when the end game is 0, then brilliant. Any longer than 8 weeks, I would say categorically, do not do it, because it's just so bad. Don't do it. Subutex is I don't know if anyone knows too much about Subutex, I'll just tell you what I know. Subutex is it's taken sublingually, and you've got to take it when you're actually in withdrawals, because it's an opioid. I think, Jack, you might be able to help here. Is it an opioid blocker? So if you take it when you're using and you've got methadone on board, then it will put you into instant withdrawal. So
it essentially fills up the opiate receptors and essentially evicts all other opiates from those receptors. So, but again, that's the theory. But in practice, I know enough opiate users that use it in conjunction with their opiates and claim that it gives them a better buzz. So, you know what I mean? What we're told by the chemical companies and the actual action of these things in compound with people's lifestyles and...
Yeah, but I know, well, we know people that get it prescribed, chop it up and snort it, get a buzz from it that way. So, I mean, I don't know too much about it. That's how it's supposed to be used medically, anyway. But the methadone thing, I don't know, it's very preferable for the government. It keeps people, it stops users, committing crime. It keeps them stable. So there are, plus points to methadone, but the effects, the side effects and etc. from methadone, they're just not worth it. When you weigh up the two...
An unacceptable level of risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, just another point here is that Stephen has again put in the chat box here that you'll miss it for the rest of your life, even if you take it for 8 weeks. Well, again, I have to take issue with you there. I use the example of my sickle cell brother-in-law, who used to have sickle cell bouts on a regular basis and become completely hospitalised by these outbreaks. Essentially, sickle cell is a disease largely amongst the Afro-Caribbean community and amongst some of the Arabian genetic types. And it's essentially a blood disorder where the red blood cells collapse and can no longer carry oxygen around your body. And it's essentially like suffocating, but while you can still breathe. Incredibly painful, debilitating disorder. And for which he was... continually dosed for prolonged periods with incredible amounts of morphine while he was under the hospital's care. And fascinated as I was with the subject of opiate addiction, I spoke at great length to my brother-in-law. I believe he's probably actually now dead. He was very lucky to have survived past 21, and he would now be in his 50s and possibly a world record-breaking sickle cell victim. If he was. Unfortunately, I've lost contact with him. I must try and find where he is. But essentially, on talking to Robert about this, he said that his experience of opiate withdrawals on leaving hospital would essentially be a couple of days of not quite feeling right. Now, bearing in mind this man would have been on medicinal quality far in excess of anything that you might choose to use as a recreational dose. This would be completely narcotic doses. They would leave him essentially in an opiate coma for the period of his hospital stay, which could be prolonged. It could be up to 6 months at times. So he would spend 6 months on an enormous dose of opiates, come out of hospital, and within 3 or 4 days would be feeling pretty much as right as rain. And it had never even occurred to him to pursue the consumption that he'd had in hospital. So again, what we're actually seeing here is that if people become addicted to these substances, it's largely not actually an action of the substance itself. It's some kind of interaction between the societal cues, between the things that make us consume those drugs in the first place, and how that consumption is perceived by our peer group. So I think that very much the suffering of the heroin addict with the pains of withdrawals are actually largely driven by that heroin addict's belief that the withdrawal from heroin is going to be painful.
Of course, yeah. I mean the fear of and.
Well, the kind of meeting your fellow users on the street corner, waiting for the dealer to turn up, and you're all standing there shivering, snotty, and in pain. That's a very powerful kind of social cue. And unless you've been completely abstracted from that, unless you've never seen it on television, unless you've not got that expectation at all in your mindset, then you will be affected by that.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I don't know if Stephen would like to call in. I know that he's obviously quite interested in, the subject. I don't know if you're up for calling in, Stephen.
Well, if anybody does want to call into the show, they can use the call in live button at the page at the top of the tns.ning site. You will get through to my Freeman Jack Skype. I may have some trouble including you into the call, so please bear with me if I haven't got you as a contact.
Okay, thank you. I think we should go to a bit of a tune in a minute. Did anybody else want to add anything there?
No, I'm fine. I think a lot of interesting and good stuff was said on that subject. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one that I think could be talked about for longer, and again, it's relevant because welfare and Welfare All Stars is all about our well-being, and there is going to be a percentage of us that have had addiction problems. Might find this useful or have something to add that would be useful for other people. So. Okay, should we go to a tune then? And this is my choice, I think. Good afternoon, everyone, again. That was Crass with Do They Owe Us a Living? I think that's what it's called. I haven't heard it for an awful long time, but that was for Mahatma anyway. Hope you're listening. Good afternoon, everyone, again. We're back. We haven't got very much longer, so we're going to spend the sort of last 15 minutes just sort of having a general roundup. I'm going to read a blog about... This was posted on Facebook, and I know Blue Skies has pointed this out to me earlier. I had already read it, and when I read it the first time, I've only read it once, and when I read it back out to Jack, and I was nearly crying. My voice was breaking because it made me really, really tearful. It really upset me. So I'm going to read this out. It's an ATOS story. And then I know Nick's got one as well, so I think we're just going to see how we go from there. Okay, so again, this was posted as a blog on a Facebook page. Right, Bob Lee. Have never experienced anything like it. ATOS full to bursting with disabled in wheelchairs, mentally impaired with CPNSs or CAB advisors. Steaming hot with water dispensers empty, 5 practitioners between 30 minutes and an hour behind schedule. Guy ranting, fat fucking bitch, I've been here 2 hours. Guy in wheelchair shat himself, and the stench. My God, he is not long for this world. And I, among others, heaved on their fucking carpet as his poor wife screamed, "You cunts, my husband's dying, and you're going to leave me with this memory of his last days," with tears pouring down her face. Point me in the direction of Downing Street and let me thump the fucking table after I slit their goddamn fucking throats. Sorry for the language, but I'm disgusted that this is what this country has become to, shitting on the ill to show how strong we are. It really got to me, and it's still getting to me now. It's really emotive, and I can't imagine being stuck in an ATOS assessment centre yesterday or today when it's boiling hot, with people that are so sick they shouldn't be there, people that shouldn't be fighting for money that is rightly theirs. It's just, it's shitting on the ill to show how strong we are. It's just fucking disgusting. Go on, Nick.
There's not much else you can say about that, but I think, you think of that situation and you think through that situation of what they're putting people through. There's another article that came up, similar vein, but just in a quieter vein. It's just headed incidents like this shame us all. A blind, deaf, tube-fed, non-verbal disabled man from Scotland has been deemed fit for work by the DWP as a result of not completing the form correctly. His benefits will be stopped on 7th of June and he will have to access the appeal process to have this decision overturned. This man has to have 24-hour care, and the person who had completed his form for him, as his disability prevents him, had not included something in the 30-page form, which meant that due to that error, his money will stop. These forms are very lengthy, complicated, that ask many intimate and intrusive questions, very much like the disability benefit forms I complete on behalf of my children. The problem isn't the fact that you have to ask for help. It isn't the time it takes to complete them. It isn't the caring that you have to do at the same time. It isn't the humiliation that you feel as you complete them. It isn't the shame culture which has grown up in recent years around those legitimately asking for help. It isn't the fear of hate crime which vulnerable people face. It isn't the lack of disability access which greet many disabled people called to an assessment with untrained staff. It isn't the tabloid press who brand genuinely disabled people as scroungers and scum. It isn't any of these things. It's all of them.
I'm glad I didn't read that out. Probably would have cried if I'd read that out.
There is more, but I can't take it much further than that.
No, I can't say I blame you. It's reading stuff like that out, and reading it to yourself is one thing, but actually reading it out is, I don't know, it makes it that bit more real. Well, it does for me. Those stories are just horrific, and these people are going through these things.
I just hope that, people listening in. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hello.
The people listening in to the show. From some of those articles that we read, I just hope that people listening in do truly now, understand that there are real big issues, and there are people in serious, pain and suffering. Not only, because of the position they're in physically or mentally, but because of how they're being treated by the system. So I really hope that people really get to understand why, in some cases the like with benefits and incapacity and this kind of thing with the money that they get, and it's not a huge amount of money, but it's money still that at least makes their lives just a little easier. But those articles you read, I mean, it's just really upsetting, and it just.
It's because they're real stories. They've happened. That's happened.
Yeah.
That somebody's actually living through that, and for me, that's heartbreaking that we're allowing it. It's. I don't know how we would stop it, but why have we let it get so this far that we talk about it, and we can talk about it like this, but whatever we say, whatever we do, isn't going to make a difference. I don't know how to stop it. I just don't, and I feel helpless. It just makes me feel so inadequate, and it upsets me. It really genuinely does.
Yeah, it upsets me. I think people are I think they don't want to look at the darkness. They don't want to look at the dark stuff, because people can be wrapped up in a bit of a blanket, security blanket, even if it's financially, but they develop attitudes, attitudes about other people, and they just form opinions, and those opinions are, can come from just information, when they really maybe not have any experience in whatsoever with what some people are going through and how they're being treated, but they have to face up to it, and they have to realise, it's a society. What kind of society do you want to live in? What kind of community do you want to live in?
But it seems to be target the people that are the most needy, the most vulnerable. And I know we were talking about addicts earlier, but it's it's a sick, it's a disabled. Now it's addicts. Who's it going to be next? I don't know, prisoners. Who else is vulnerable? What other category of the population are they going to exterminate next? Because that's what it is. If we this person is needs 24-hour care. I can't remember the specific details. I don't know, Nick, what were the specific details? In a wheelchair, needing 24-hour care, being fed through a tube, and he's found fit to work because he hasn't filled in a form. What the fuck? And we're sitting here, we're talking about it, and that's somebody's life. horrifies me and frightens me, and yeah, I've said it makes me feel inadequate, because what can we do? We can do what we can with the information that we have and, you know, the resources that we have, but at the end of the day, where's that, you know, I kind of feel sometimes, where the fuck's that going to get me anyway? Why the fuck should I bother?
Nick, you there?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I'm you know, it just upset me so much, and I just feel so much for these people, because, you know, I've seen it. It's horrible.
I mean, my mum is a good example of someone who's a good person, because she always says to me, whenever she sees anyone in a disabled situation, in a wheelchair or whatever, or someone who's, you know, who has you know, a very physically genuine problem, whenever she walks past, she says a quick prayer for them. She says, "God bless," you know. I mean, that's the attitude we need. That's what people need to have. They need to see them, you know, that they're not nothing. That they are still people. They can't help how they're born. They can't help, you know. I mean, people can end up in car accidents, and the next thing you know, they can end up in wheelchairs. You know, it's all this demonization and, you know, through media, and, you know, remember, it's like, you know, the Nazi Party in Germany. I mean, who did they go after? They you know, they went after the disabled, because why? Because they considered them to be nothing. You know, they were a burden. And if that attitude progresses more and more in the Western world, you know, we can't let it. We can't allow that to happen. It's just not on. It's not on.
How are we going to stop it, though? What do we do to stop it? Do you know what I mean? You know, for me, it's just another nail in the coffin, or whatever you want to, whatever, I don't know, thing you want to call it. But things like the student protests, you know, they were going to use rubber bullets to stop protesters, and no one said anything. You know, now they're doing this, they're going to be doing this to, you know, they're doing it to the sick, they're doing it to the disabled. No one gives a fuck, really. Bit of noise in the media. We're talking about it. Do you think anything's going to happen? I don't. I really, you know, I truly don't. So, you know, eventually they will start making addicts and alcoholics go to rehab, and if they don't, they'll cut their money and they'll be destitute on the street, and that's the way it's going to go. And we'll swallow it again, because what else can we do? Protest and get shot? Don't contract? I don't know. Don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I'm being well cheerful, aren't I?
I think you're just sharing an honesty. I mean, I'd like to think, with what's happening, and in a slightly more positive way, I myself, I do have kind of like a almost love and hate relationship with my own species, you know. But I need to have faith still in humanity, that we will prevail and that we will pull through and that things will change. And I need to keep believing in that, because I think that's really important. That, you know, I think the more we go through it, and maybe some of the worst things that we see, that would be enough of us, almost like a spiritual kick up the arse for us to turn the right way and do the right thing, you know. So I think, you know, we need.
I hope so. I really do hope so.
I mean, look at what's happening. I mean, people are already changing, I think, you know, within the truth movement and all these subjects, and people are trying their best. You know, I don't think people are doing nothing. It just seems to be.
But again, the freedom movement is ridiculed quite a lot, and you know, probably people won't want to hear that, but it's true. You know, you'll walk into the job centre. I know Lee was Lee or somebody was talking about being. Yeah, I think it was Lee, in his experience of going to the job centre. They thought he was an alcoholic because of the questions he was asking. You know, if you have an alternative view, you're not going to be listened to. You're going to be called a nutter. It is. People don't want to hear it, but it is ridiculed. You know, people do think you're barking mad.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right, but it's, you know, what other people view us. It's how other people view us. how the
Well,
government...
in a sense, they're right. They're a majority, and they have a different view of normality.
Well, yeah, but they're the ones that have the power, aren't they? So, you know, if they say we're, you know, that we're pathetic or, you know, ridiculous or call us alcoholics or, you know, belittle us in whatever which way they choose to, I don't know.
Their attitudes, with that attitude, they're bringing the power structure down on themselves anyway. So they really do need to wake up. They need to change that viewpoint, because they're in the front line. They're going to end up on that kind of frontline situation where, you know.
But they're the ones that, they're the ones with the power. They're the ones that inform the general public, with their agenda through the media, through music, through whatever form they possibly fucking can. They reprogram the whole of the population to believe that anyone with an alternative view is bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people get bored.
Sorry, some people get...
Some people get bored. Sometimes the programming breaks down. A few more join. You have to keep going in that direction, because eventually it's going to fall down under its own weight anyway.
But how bad is it going to get before that happens? Rubber bullets, the sick and disabled, addicts. It's like, what's next? It's, and if I can see it, and Jesus, I'm not woo-woo into woo-woo, and most of you know my kind of attitude to stuff like that. If it's apparent to me, Jesus, I'm not paranoid by any fucking stretch, and I definitely know that. So it's just mad. And I do sound paranoid now. Sorry, that was supposed to be funny. Okay, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed today's show. I hope everybody else has. I've, enjoyed talking to Jack. I enjoyed talking to Julie. It was really good having you guys commenting on whatever we were talking about, because you just, whatever you have to, add is always, I don't know, pertinent, of use, informative. Just, thank you. Thank you for all of you, and all of you out there as well. The stuff you've been posting in the chat box is great, because it shows you're listening. All right, oh yeah, sorry. Get in touch. I really want to cover data protection and contracts and stuff next week, so we're going to head that way. So get in touch at team@welfare.org.uk, welfare@welfare.org.uk, TNS Radio at tnsning.com, Scottish Sovereigns on the Land.ning.com. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Good night.